Sunshine, but there will still be a little bit of rain around. So first thing this morning, quite a chilly start out there, a little bit of mist around. Just keeping an eye on the risk of a little bit of cloud and patchy rain just affecting the very far east of England. But for many parts of England and Wales, a good amount of sunshine around, a few showers, but the main bulk of the showers really will be across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where one or two could still be on the heavy side. But in the sunshine, especially across the south, temperatures reaching around 14 or 15 degrees. So into Saturday night, for many parts of England and Wales, we generally turn dry and clear. The clear skies then moving up towards Scotland, giving a fairly widespread frost here come the early hours of Easter Day. At the same time, some scattered showers just moving into parts of southwest England, with the risk of a little bit of sea fog just lapping in across parts of eastern England. So a bit of a grey, murky start across eastern parts on Easter Day, but that will burn its way back towards the coastline, but may well linger along the immediate coast. Best of the sunshine come Easter Day will be across parts of Scotland, down the spine of the country, where the far west, again, seeing the risk of some showers, and that may well merge into a longer spell of rain as we head into the afternoon. Temperatures, maximum 16 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Has the NHS killed your relative and then lied to you about it? There is an alleged cover-up culture in the NHS. They lie to you about why your loved one died, about poor care, then bury documents with evidence in them, and they try to silence staff who speak out. This is according to the NHS Ombudsman. There are around 11,000 avoidable deaths every year. 11,000. Someone's mum dies, their children know something dodgy happened, and then they're met with a rotten culture, including the altering of care plans, the disappearance of crucial documents, and complete denials. They lie to you, but they really get away with it because the NHS is like a religion, and people dare not criticise it. You'd be accused of NHSophobia. The annual budget is around £180 billion, and we now have about 2 million people working for the NHS. They cannot keep blaming everything on being underfunded and understaffed. If they're covering up medical negligence, it means the problem doesn't get dealt with and it keeps happening. And that is the fault of the NHS managers, the people who run it. They've got the money for 837 non-clinical staff working at English hospitals on the highest paid Band 9 contracts, which is between £99,000 and £115,000 a year. How many nurses would that pay for? How many junior doctors? And they've got the time on their hands to think about making the NHS the world's first carbon-neutral health service. They've got time to consider whether women in labour should be picked up by an electric ambulance that might have to be recharged en route to the hospital. There are NHS managers with a budget of £180 billion, 2 million members of staff, and they're crying about being understaffed and under-resourced. If they spent more time looking after patients instead of finding ways to cover up avoidable deaths, then maybe we'd have a better health service.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo and this is Saturday Morning Live. So good to have your company this morning for an action-packed show. We'll have all the day's top stories with former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth. Is there a war on Easter? We had hot cross buns, Ramadan lights in London, and so-called gesture eggs. What is going on? I'll be sitting down with two members of the GB News family to get to the bottom of all the extraordinary news. And today is Bipolar Awareness Day, and I'll be meeting this week's Greatest Britain to hear about her story and experiences with the disorder. So I'm Benny No Mates today. It's just me going solo for 2 hours, so I need your company. Send in your tweets and your emails. And at the end of the show, I don't know if you saw that NHS advice saying that you shouldn't sit and eat an Easter egg in one go. I'm going to give that a crack. I reckon I can do 10 in one go, but we'll see how I get on. Before all that, here's your news with Sophia Wednesday.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. A league table showing the nationalities of migrants with the highest crime rates has been proposed. A group of Tory MPs wants to see the statistics published annually for every offender convicted in England and Wales. They say the rules will help the Home Office impose stricter visa and deportation policies for certain countries. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is behind the plan. Speaking exclusively to GB News, he said the public wants to know how arrivals to the UK are impacting the country.
I want the most honest and transparent debate about immigration, legal or illegal, that we can possibly have. And it is wrong that the government or other agencies hide statistics. I have laid an amendment to the upcoming Criminal Justice Bill, which tackles one of these issues, and it says that the government must publish statistics on crimes and sentences by country of origin and by visa and asylum status. I think that the public want to know who's coming into our country and what the economic, the fiscal and the societal impact of immigration is.
Now, counter-terrorism police are investigating the stabbing of an Iranian TV journalist who was attacked outside his home in southwest London. Priya Zarati is in a stable condition after suffering an injury to his leg. The attack comes after Lord Cameron's recent condemnation of Tehran, accusing it of targeting journalists in the UK, including an alleged plot to kill 2 television reporters working for Iran TV. Welsh military camps will be used to house Afghans who risk their lives helping the UK. East Camp and St Athan, Vale of Glamorgan, will house people who worked with the UK government in Afghanistan but fled after the Taliban seized power. The site can host a maximum of 180 people, with 50 people expected to be there by the end of March and more arriving in April. Those arriving are eligible under the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy Programme. The Ministry of Defence says we owe a debt of gratitude to those brave Afghans who risked their lives working alongside our forces in support of the UK mission. Households should brace for a host of essential bill increases from the 1st of April, but not all costs are going up. Cuts to national insurance and increases in the amount people receive in benefits take effect in early April. But regular bills like council tax, broadband and water are going up, so experts say family budgets need to carefully plan. The average annual council tax bill will rise by £106 this year as local authorities seek to maximise revenue to pay for struggling frontline services. The average annual water and sewage bill will rise by 6% in England and Wales, up £27 to £473. Some good news, though. The annual energy bill for a household using a typical amount of gas and electricity will fall to just £1,690, which is the lowest for 2 years. And travel disruption is expected to continue in large parts of the UK today as the Easter holiday gets underway. There were reports of long queues at Dover last night as vehicles faced an hour's wait to be processed. Rough weather from Storm Nelson remains, with flood warnings and alerts in place across England. Network Rail is urging train passengers to check their journey details before travelling due to some major routes being closed for engineering works. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. Now, let me know what you're up to this Easter bank holiday weekend. Are you getting up to anything special tonight? Maybe some farm days with the kids? I did last weekend and it was very, very good. I'm working, actually, today, obviously, Monday, but tomorrow I've got a special Easter breakfast, which I'm looking forward to. Anyway, let me know what you're up to. Now, let's move on to our top story of the day. It's the country's oldest sporting tradition, the Oxford and Cambridge boat race, and it's getting underway just before 3 p.m. today when the River Thames is at high tide. Speaking of the Thames, though, the Labour Party, well, they've been sticking their oar in as well. Thames Water is threatening to rack up bills by about 40%. And they've said they'll place tougher measures on water companies, such as Thames Water, to clean up waste. And that comes as elevated levels of E. coli bacteria have been detected in the Thames. So it's prompted a warning to today's Oxbridge rowers not to engage in their traditional celebration of jumping in the river after the race. So joining me now is Chief Exec of River Action Campaign Group, James Wallace. Good morning, James. Is this a sort of, how uncommon is this extraordinary level of E. coli in the river? Do we see it now and then? Does it vary depending on the year, or is this a record high for E. coli?
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me on. Well, this is quite shocking, isn't it? My organisation, River Action, undertook a month's worth of testing ahead of the boat race using some fancy new pathogen testing kit that's approved by the World Health Organization, if only I could get it out. And we have discovered that there are 10 times as much E. coli in the water than is safe to swim in. 10,000 colonies of E. coli per 100 millilitres. And the reason why this is shocking is because when that gets into someone's stomach, if you're a rower, a swimmer and so on, that can make you very sick, possibly hospitalise you. And if it gets into an open wound, which of course rowers have on their hands in the form of blisters and so on, it could seriously hospitalise you and possibly lead to sepsis.
James, I'm not going to get myself riled up about the water companies as I did on the channel yesterday because, it's one of my big bugbears. But the way they pump raw sewage into our seas, I live by the coast, they do it every now and then, and it means I can't take my kids into the water. And also the way they're polluting our riverways. Do any other countries deal with this kind of thing, or are we, sort of the worst in Europe for it?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because a lot of people refer to us as the dirty man of Europe. We are the most polluted in terms of waterways. In the whole of the continent. And what we've seen here with Thames Water is a 162% increase from 2023, 162% increase to 200,000 hours of discharge. And that means that they have completely broken all records, even by their own low standards. And what's going on, as I'm sure you're well aware, and probably your listeners and viewers are too, that we've seen a deregulation of the water industry in the past 14 years or so. And it means that with the Environment Agency losing a lot of their funding, about 70%, they can't monitor, they can't enforce the law, and companies like Thames Water are running to the hills with our money. So rising bills is quite frankly outrageous. They've already had our money to fix leaky pipes. They need to get investment in. And what we may well see with Thames Water is probably some sort of administration, because as I think you may know, they've got about £18 billion worth of debt. They're due to pay back 190 in a few weeks' time, 190 million, and they don't have it. So it's quite possible they're going to go bust, and we might have to bail them out. I mean, imagine that.
It's just outrageous. These shareholders, they take millions of pounds in dividends, and when you look at who owns the companies, it's all people from, Abu Dhabi, China. They're not British companies, and the consumer, most importantly, unlike the gas and the electricity, doesn't have the option to shop around and choose their water company. So what's your campaign group calling for? Do you want nationalisation?
Well, the reason why this has all happened is since 1989, when Margaret Thatcher privatised the industry, it was done on a monopoly basis. But the problem is it's a geographic monopoly. So you can't choose. I mean, I'm a Thames Water customer, one of those 15 million people, and I can't go anywhere else. What we'd like to see in River Action is, first of all, we're thinking about the boat races for the rowers to be really careful, to follow the guidance that we've issued in partnership with British Rowing and the Rivers Trust and my organisation, River Action. Don't jump in the water. And then secondly, from a viewer's point of view, when you're watching a race today, think hard about who you vote for in the next election. I'm not going to tell you who you should, but put river health and water security at the top of your voting priorities, because frankly, there is nothing more important than clean, healthy rivers and drinking water.
Yeah, OK, James. I mean, if that was me, I wouldn't even bother doing the race. I'd stay well away from it. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it this morning. Let's go to my panel for this morning. Former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth. Charlie, did you go to Oxbridge? Am I right in saying that?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No,
oh, sorry.
They wouldn't let me in, I'm afraid. But I went to York.
OK.
But I do follow the boat race.
What do you make of all this river pollution and the fact that, they can't even jump in, as they do traditionally, jump in the water now?
Well, I currently live in Putney, so the boat race will come through where I live to Putney Bridge, and it is a tradition at the end of the boat race that you get hold of the cocks and chuck them in.
Hang on a minute, Charlie. So you were a former advisor to Michael Gove, who of course is still in government. Isn't this partly your fault?
Well, I don't take personal responsibility for it, but he was the Environment Secretary. You're absolutely right, yes. And during that time when he was Environment Secretary, you know, there was a bit of deregulation that took place, but it was in order to ensure that you can get better deals for ratepayers, to make sure that actually the water companies, with that deregulation, can deal with this problem. But as Michael was saying just the other day, for far too long, Thames Water in particular, but all other water companies across the country, haven't dealt with the problem, and they absolutely need to be held to account. There's absolutely no way taxpayers should pick up this funding black hole that
it's 30 seconds. We'll move on to today's papers, but 30 seconds on the fact that our nation is literally swimming in its own filth.
Yeah, I mean, this. I love what a unifying issue this is. Left to right, everyone is sick of this and wants to see it sorted out.
Yeah. OK. Let's move on to the first story in the papers today. What is it? We've got, is it a Migrant Crime League table?
Yes.
Yes, that's the top story of the hour.
I mean, some would say that sounds a bit bigoted.
Well, I think what it's been an amendment put forward in the criminal justice bill by Robert Jenrick, who was, as you know, used to be a Home Office minister, but resigned from Rishi's government over the Rwanda policy. He's now basically trying to ask for data to be published by the Home Office on an annual basis to make sure that the public are aware that who comes into the country, if they are, and what nationality they are. There's a league table of those nationalities who are the most, who commit the most crimes. So he wants the UK public to know which nationalities that do come into the country, whether it's legal or, well, it'd have to be legal, because if you're a legal immigrant, you're probably not going to be known about. But he wants the public to know what nationalities that come into the country are the most offensive, I suppose.
Good idea, Candice?
It's difficult. I mean, yes, I think the first thing people think when they see something like this is, oh no, this is going to be so prejudiced. But I think in the current context where we've seen some utterly bizarre decisions made by the Home Office, you know, looking at Abdul Azidi, for instance, you know, he was given asylum even though he'd committed crimes.
Convicted sex attacker.
Yes, and it's such an opaque process and we don't really know what's going on. So maybe a bit of transparency would be good so the public could put more pressure on the Home Office to make better decisions that are in the interest of the public. I mean, you've seen the Albanian drug gangs who've usurped almost every area of the drug market in England over the past few years. I don't think people are necessarily aware of that, and I think we do need to become more aware of it.
Charlie, you're going to get some people on the left side of the argument who say, you know, this is just a racist dog whistle and demonising migrants, right?
Well, there is an issue because there might be a league table, for example, whereby, well, I won't name a country, but if a country is at the top of the league table, the Home Office will then think to itself, OK, we will block or we will scrutinise applicants from that country more than a country that might be lower down the league table.
Yeah.
You can't judge one person's application just on the back of everybody else. You have to take it case by case because there might be someone that genuinely does have a claim to this country, but they're being discriminated against because just so many other people that are
and I'm sorry,
have committed crime.
Every other country does it and behaves in a normal way. It's always Britain that gets lambasted with these, you know, racist labels because we just want to behave like any other country. You know, Australia does it. But anyway, let's move on. Next story. Labour is more trusted on defence than the Tories.
So this is just fascinating. You see it in so many areas now. It's almost like perception is reversed on how Labour versus Tories is perceived by the public. I mean, there's this big childcare issue now where the Conservatives are funding for 2-year-olds 15 hours childcare, but Labour wants to balance the books on it. And then you look at defence spending, people think that the Tories aren't behind the army, but they think that the Labour will. Labour will fund them.
They've just allowed beards to be regrown, haven't they, in the army? Is that going to go any way towards boosting recruitment numbers?
No.
Oh, I might join. Not to grow a beard.
How long would it take you to grow a beard?
Oh, far too long. I don't think anybody wants to see me on the front
I think the rule is you have to be able to grow it within 2 weeks, a full beard, and it's very precise. A certain millimetre. I think the Sergeant Major will come round and measure your goatee and make sure it's all up to scratch.
But it's absurd. I mean, they've had so many problems with recruitment. They're just not successfully recruiting people. Yet when you think about the warfare of the future, which is going to require a lot more intelligence, a lot more looking into AI, deception, fakery, you think there are so many young people who've grown up online total digital natives, that would actually appeal to them, that sort of thing, that sort of very cerebral problem solving, thinking about war in that way. But no one seems to want to use that approach. It's these sort of token things like you can grow a beard.
But there was that theory for years that wars wouldn't be fought on the ground anymore. It would be drones and, cyber attacks and so on. But actually, in the Red Sea, we've had our pants down, basically. We've not got enough aircraft carriers. There's no jets. The Houthi rebels have been running riot. So there is a case, really, I think, for increased defence spending for jets, hardware, more soldiers. However, it's just not a vote winner, is it, Charlie?
Well, in focus groups, it doesn't appear at the top. It's always the cost of living in the NHS, schools, I think crime, and then defence does come at the bottom of those focus groups. But I do think it's important, and you're absolutely right, Ben, because, I think there was an idea that war had shifted from, being boots on the ground to technology and to drones and to intelligence. But now, you're absolutely right, as you see in the Red Sea, as you see in Ukraine as you see in Gaza. It is a boots-on-the-ground warfare that we're facing. But I think the biggest threat to the UK is still Russia and China, which is cyber technology and spying and all the rest of it. So you can't rule it out. Those are the biggest threats to the UK. So you've got to maintain funding on both fronts.
Maybe the beards will help. Should we move on to our third story, the NHS? So apparently thousands of patients at the country's worst performing hospitals are going to be given access to private healthcare. Is this a good way to get down the astronomical waiting list? Candice?
Well, it's so interesting because, you hear about waiting lists, but then when you actually dig down into the data, it's only like 15 trusts out of, I think, maybe about 200 that are having problems with their waiting list. The others are actually managing them just fine. And I want to know what is going on in these trusts. Is it a problem of management? Because I think ultimately that is always what goes on in these very dysfunctional NHS trusts. And you never, ever hear anything from the CEO of the NHS, Amanda Pritchard.
No.
She's always so quiet. I mean, if this was a private company, she would be held to account so much more, but never, ever, ever, nary a word about it with the NHS. I think they're not going to have a choice. They're going to have to use the private sector. They've got extra capacity. People are waiting months and months and months and having their lives absolutely ruined. But I think we do need to dig in a bit deeper and scrutinise these trusts and find out what exactly is going on. Why can they not manage their waiting lists?
Well, I mean, they're all hiring diversity and inclusion managers at 150k a pop and spending my local trust, I won't name it because I have to get a reply from them, but they spent hundreds of thousands on a monument for the front of A&E, just some stupid statue.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, the Tories would say there's record funding for the NHS. Isn't the problem then, as some would argue, there's just too many people here?
Well, I think there's too many middle managers in the NHS and too much bureaucracy, which sort of doesn't get to the heart of what actually everybody wants. Is when you turn up and present yourself at A&E, or if you've got a routine appointment or whatever, you're not getting the service that you should have. And interestingly, in the two trusts that do appear to be the worst are North and East Hertfordshire, followed by Sussex. Now, those are not areas that scream out to you as places of depravity or where you're sort of, there's high employment in those areas. There are high wages. But it is probably because it's an ageing population, there's an elderly population, and that's the problem with the NHS at the moment, is that we are living longer, we're getting older, there are more people that are going to need to use the NHS. How do you actually sustain a funding model for the NHS fit for the future?
Yes.
Because that is only going to be a growing problem, and it's not going to be solved just by throwing money constantly at the NHS. You've got to look at the reforms, you've got to look at using the private sector, you've got to have a very, very serious conversation with the public to say, can the NHS continue in its current form?
Last word, Ken.
And maybe starting further down the line, I think people need to be personally empowered to take care of their health so that when they're older, they are in a better state. I mean, I just think that's a fact.
Sure. Yes, definitely. I mean, I've said for a long time, people, without sounding, arrogant, people go around thinking pasta salad is a healthy lunch, and actually when you dig into the things about carbohydrates and insulin spikes and so on, I mean, it gets very complex. I just think we should be teaching kids and people a lot more about health and nutrition and just the basics of even just like food groups, proteins, fats, carbs and so on. But anyway, great stuff, good start. Thank you so much. We'll crack on. Coming up, I'm going to be sitting down with this week's Greatest Britain. But up next, the war on Easter. You must have seen it. There have been some extraordinary stories this week, including the so-called gesture eggs. So we're going to get cracking on that in just a bit. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News with me, Ben Leo, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This story caught my eye. Lloyds Bank, right, they own the insurance company Scottish Widows. They have now issued some kind of suggested guidance about which word to try and avoid upsetting people or perhaps be as inclusive as possibly can be. One of these words is widows, which really caught my eye because of the amount of stupidity. If you own a brand literally called Scottish Widows, you can't then be saying that the word widows is triggering and offensive. Anyway, because it is so ludicrous, I need to move over from that part because I want to talk about the broader issue. So many organisations, they have what they call ESG. I'm going to bring a graphic up on the screen in case you're not familiar with what this is. But it's a sense of kind of government, and I would say it's almost like a spine. It underpins so much of what business does today. It stands for environmental, social and governance. And it's around things like how does a business perform when it comes to their environmental impact? How diverse are their employees? How diverse is their board? And so on and so forth. Do you think ESG is a force for good and much needed within business or not, Ben?
It is the introduction of systemic institutionalised prejudice in the United Kingdom, which is going to damage dreadfully our economy, but also our culture, our cohesion as a society, and it's undermining, again, coming back to it, the nation-state that is the United Kingdom. ESG has to be ditched.
Strong words. Judita, do you agree with him?
I don't agree, because I think that with ESG, when you have them, what you're having an increase in is specialists in ESG being introduced into companies to kind of imbricate it into how the company functions. If you're moving in a direction of making your company's functionality be optimized in a way that is inclusive of anyone from any background who has the qualifications to occupy that position, that is a good thing.
Welcome back, it's Ben Leo, 10:22, Saturday Morning Live, only on GB News. Let's get stuck into some of your emails. Sean says the process of a migrant offenders league table shouldn't be prejudiced because it will be based on fact. If there are a majority of offenders from one particular country, then of course we should be cautious around their claims. And Barry says, what's the use of a league table? Most people are aware of the criminals and their countries of origin. Not sure about that. I mean, it'd be good to have it in sort of raw data so you could hit back against the lefties when they say that, you know, you're peddling myths. Max says the water company farce is a failure of those who are supposed to monitor and report into water companies. I think he's talking about Ofwat, so the regulator. What are they doing? Why have they allowed this situation with Thames Water to happen? And also, by the way, I'm going to say it again, why have they allowed water companies to pump raw sewage into the sea? I would quite like to go swimming with my boys at some point. Right, let's get cracking with our next story. Earlier this month, Ramadan lights are on display in London's West End, funded by a Muslim billionaire. Expected to stay up over Easter weekend, people have been asking where are the lights celebrating Christian traditions. And our beloved hot cross buns, you might have seen this, had their crosses removed, replaced with a tick, which actually looked like a Nike tick. So, with certain supermarkets changing the symbolic cross to a tick, and also various shops changing the meaning of Easter eggs, changing the signs to gesture eggs. So this one retailer, if you can see on the screen, in Lincolnshire, received a massive backlash from Christians after they ditched the term Easter. Cadbury's, by the way, they said this wasn't on their packaging, it was just the shop. I believe it was a corner shop in a local neighbourhood. But is there a war on Easter and Christianity? Has this censoring of religious traditions gone a step too far? Joining me now to get to the bottom of all this is GB News family, Darren Grimes, host of the Saturday 5, and also Charlie Rowley, who is staying with us for this. Darren, let's start with you. I bet you've got something to say about the erasure of Christianity, have you?
Absolutely. I think, you know, whilst this country may no longer be spiritually Christian, I think culturally it very much is. And I think a lot of people feel personally quite aggrieved to see the way in which, you know, London seems to put up all these Ramadan lights but not ignore Easter, and we find that there's the flag of Pakistan hoisted on top of Westminster Abbey. I think a lot of people are getting really quite concerned that we're moving so far in another direction that we're actually seeking to appease certain faiths, minority faiths, over actually championing our own, because of the fact that I think it's easier for businesses, it's easier for public bodies to actually champion this one religion.
Charlie?
Well, we are a Christian country, and the head of state, King Charles, will be head of the Church of England. He'll give an Easter message, he'll give a Christmas message. You know, these are fundamentally Christian.
But is there an agenda for the erasure of Christianity and our faith?
Well, I think certainly, I think Darren's got a point. There is a dumbing down of our traditions and certain things. You send a season's greeting card as opposed to a Christmas card. That is just ridiculous. You know, not sending, having a gesture egg as opposed to an Easter egg. It's ridiculous.
Just as a reminder, right, we had the passenger information board at King's Cross Station showing Ramadan scriptures. We had Westminster Council yesterday who had a Ramadan display, and when they were quizzed by the Daily Telegraph about where their Christian Easter display was, they scrambled to put one out some hours later. You had the gesture eggs, albeit it was just an independent shop, it wasn't Cadbury's, but we had the gesture eggs. And what else was there? There was something else.
Well, Kit Kat announced it. It was in Australia, albeit, but Kit Kat had a Ramadan egg thing.
Charlie?
Well, I think there are two things here, because obviously you can't dumb down or continue to dumb down Easter, which is a Christian celebration. But what you can do is make sure that you're celebrating Easter, the Christian faith, the Christian traditions, in the same way as you would any other religion. We are a multicultural society. We are a very diverse society, particularly in London. You know, there are different religions and cultures. So I don't think there's a problem with actually having a set of lights that celebrate Ramadan, that celebrate Eid, that celebrate any other cultural or religious strand in society. But as long as you maintain that with the Christian faith.
Well, the problem is people feel like that's not happening. So Linda's emailed in. Good morning, Linda. She says, the Easter message is being removed from Easter food items. If an egg doesn't say Easter on the package, I won't buy it. Do the manufacturers know something we don't? We are being erased. Darren, is that erased? I mean, that's a bit of a... Is that doing some heavy lifting, that word?
Look, no, I think there's a fair point to be made there, where actually people are so scared now of being accused of not being tolerant and inclusive. Now, I think tolerance is so broad a term these days, right? What does tolerance mean? Does it mean that you have to forego one religion in particular in order to actually appease all the others? I never saw, actually, during Purim, the Jewish festival, I didn't see any lights in central London or whatever up decking the streets and all the rest of it. So it strikes me that there's one religion in particular. And why is that? And I think it's because people feel genuinely quite scared not to. People feel that they have to do this in order to prove their stripes, to look progressive and diverse, that's the word Charlie used there, and all the rest of it. London is the capital city of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has an established church. That is the Church of England. Have we forgotten that? I think we probably have.
Charlie?
Well, I don't think we've forgotten it, but you are right. We must make sure that every religion is maintained. But obviously, it is a Christian country, and Easter shouldn't be erased, as your viewer suggested, because of other religions.
So, Darren, let me take you to task. You're banging on about keeping up traditions of Christianity and, our culture. So what are you doing to celebrate Easter this weekend?
Well, I'll be at church tomorrow.
You'll be at church tomorrow?
Yes, I'm working right now, so I'm not there right now, Ben. Yes, that is correct.
Good. You're going out with me.
Well, in the afternoon.
Are you going to an Easter service together?
Oh, no. I think we'll be going to a service of a different kind.
We'll bunny hop.
It involves a pub, but...
Right, so you are putting your money where your mouth is. You're going to church.
Yes.
And it's an Easter service.
Yes.
But what...
no, it's a Ramadan service.
Yeah, right. What do other people need to do then? Because all these emails are flying in now saying our culture's being erased, our traditions are being erased, but I can guarantee, just playing devil's advocate, half of you lot emailing in won't be doing anything to proactively celebrate Christianity this Easter, apart from maybe eating chocolate, but that's nothing to do with it, really.
Yeah, but I think actually that the fact of the matter is there are many traditions that we no longer actually celebrate as we once did. Things change, but we still have those very traditions, right? We no longer... there are a multitude of things where in the past we would have gone hell for leather.
But my point is, Charlie, again, playing devil's advocate, people weren't banging on and moaning about this until we saw the Islamic Ramadan messages.
Oh, no, I think they were, you know.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. The eggs, for example, that comes around every year now.
Final word?
Well, there's a there's a growing divide within the country. That's why you see maybe Reform doing well in the polls. That's why you've seen people like Lee Anderson and Suella become very bolder about their sort of messaging about,
we want our country
back. Now, there will be people who have lots of questions about what that means, but there is a problem in society whereby, because of an over-forcefulness of a particular religion over and above what is fundamentally Christian, it means that you don't call things out for what they are. So you don't call out things like a Rochdale grooming gangs. You don't call out specific things in society that obviously make us feel less safe. We feel too disempowered to have control and to be...
By the way, where's my Easter egg? You two have rocked up onto the show with...
oh, dear.
Empty hands.
Well, I got you a gesture egg.
Go on, you've got an hour and a half to go.
I'll get you a tick cross bun.
I'll come back to you.
Literally a diversity checkbox.
I'll get you a nice bun.
Thank you. Sounds ominous. Right, just bearing in mind, I did say Cadbury's, it wasn't them who were responsible for that gesture egg, it was the independent retailer, so just to stress that. But coming up, I'll be meeting this week's Greatest Britain. But next, do you like fried eggs in the morning? Poached for me, please. But what about fried cream eggs? I used to get battered Mars bars and fried Mars bars in high school, so I'm kind of familiar with this process. But if you don't know what it is, stay tuned. I'll reveal all in just a minute. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
The Guardian's not happy, everybody, because one of their headline stories today was about a private members club that is for gentlemen only, the Garrick Club I refer to in London. There's accusations now, Quinton, that it's all the kind of upper echelons of society, all the powerful...
It's a cabal of important, powerful people who are running the country.
And I thought to myself, when I heard descriptions like that, I bet Quinton Letts is somehow involved. Are you?
I've been to the Garrick a few times.
Why can't women be members?
Because it's a gents' club. My daughter, one of my daughters, is a member of an all-women's club called the University Women's Club, and they don't allow blokes in. It's an outrage. No, it's not. It's a free country.
I mean, it's archaic and it needs to change.
What is?
Is my view. The fact that the Garrick doesn't admit women members. There are lots of these members clubs, across London, probably in other parts of the country as well, and you have to pay for membership, so it is well-to-do members of society that go. I've nothing against them existing, but all of them have changed their constitution, those that were once men only. They all now admit women. The only exception now is the Garrick. My other thought is, well, why are we talking about it if we've got nothing more important going on?
Just to be frank, I genuinely could not care less if there is a club that I'm not allowed into because of my sex. I do, though, think that if you're going to start...
You're allowed in, though. They let them in.
Yeah, but not as members.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're going to start, having all of this kind of respect and all the rest of it for single-sex spaces for men, then you can't, as a society, allow the ridiculousness that goes on in female spaces when a man sticks a dress on and a wig maybe and a bit of lipstick if he's feeling bold and says that he's called Sharon and then wants to be allowed into that space, and then those establishments then buckle and let those men actually into things like changing rooms of women. That really, really annoys me.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 10:35. You're with Ben Leo on Saturday Morning Live. Emails flying in. Steve says, if the taxpayer needs to bail out any of the utility companies, be it water or power, we should take shares in that company, similar to what happened with the banks, and there should be no dividends until debt paid. Hear, hear, Steve. Carol says, good morning, Carol. Perhaps instead of being made to pay this ludicrous tax to councils, who are obviously squandering it, it should be used to get in more staff to get the waiting list down. That's talking about the hospital patients who are going private, courtesy of the government and councils, because the NHS waiting lists are too much. Since when are hospitals a business? It's a scandal. And Linda says, the Easter message is being removed from Easter food items. Linda, I've read that, so I'll go to Cheryl. She says, I respect any religion's right to follow its traditions, but this is a Christian country, as are hundreds of other nations. If you want to call it something else, work on the bank holiday, as you clearly dissect the way of the land you live in. OK, there we go, strong stuff. So, I'm quite excited about this next one. Easter weekend is upon us, so most of us have polished off an Easter egg or two already. In actual fact, I think you're not meant to start them until tomorrow, but chocolate eggs, they've been on sale in shops for weeks now, but customers in Gosport in Hampshire have been buying their eggs from the local fish and chip shop, dipped in batter and deep fried to perfection. So, we sent our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, to try one. And by the way, there was some NHS advice this week, nanny state advice, that people shouldn't be eating Easter eggs in one go. So for the duration of this package, which I think is a couple of minutes, I'm going to see if I can crack this open and devour it by the time Jeff Moody is finished. Ready, steady, go.
Customers at Scott's Place in Gosport are queuing out of the door. But it's not a battered sausage that's bringing them out on Easter weekend. It's a cream egg, rubbed in flour, dipped in batter and deep fried in oil. Sounds disgusting.
Well, you say that, but they do come out quite nice. They are a peculiar taste, but it's very tasty.
What's nice about it?
It makes the chocolate go all gooey and like brownie-like, and then it makes the filling nice and hot.
Scott Turner sells deep-fried Mars bars too, and he just can't fry them fast enough. He sold 48 deep-fried battered cream eggs on day one, and that number has been rising by the day.
Absolutely amazing. People love them. People are trying them that don't like the idea of it, but saying, oh my God, how amazing they are. I mean, it's something you're either going to love or hate.
But mostly people love it.
Absolutely loving it, yeah.
The idea of combining batter and chocolate isn't really for the faint-hearted. They're two flavours that many would say don't go together particularly well. Time to try it. They go together really, really well. It's delicious.
But don't take my word for it. What do the good people of Gosport think?
It sounds very strange. Personally, I wouldn't go for it normally, but I'm willing to have a try.
It's quite good. Oh dear. That's good. That's actually got sort of a brownie texture type to it. That couldn't be good for the waistline.
Smells good. Oh God, that's good. That's really good. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just really, really good. It's actually really good. Oh my God, it's actually really, really good. This is not good though, because it's so unhealthy.
So if you're bored with ordinary Easter eggs, you know what you can do. Batter them, stick them in the chip pan. Confection perfection. Jeff Moody, GB News.
There we go. Done. Finished. Easy NHS. Stick it. I could do 10 at a time. Mind you, I gave one little bit to Charlie Rowley, who was sitting close by. How big was it, Charlie? That big? Yeah. Love it. There we go. OK. There we go. Don't listen to the NHS. Nanny state. If you want to sit there and munch an Easter egg in one go, or 10, do it. Right. What do we reckon about battered cream eggs at the fish and chip shop?
Well, it's interesting. It seems like you could just batter anything. But I want to know, though, how dissimilar is that?
I need some water. Can the producers please deliver me gallons of water, please, to wash this down?
How dissimilar is that to a chocolate eclair? I mean, it's not that different. I mean...
To a what, sorry?
To a chocolate eclair. You know, because you get the sort of like pastry, which is kind of deep fried. The inner bit is chocolate.
So I used to get these at high school when I was a kid. At lunchtime, we'd all venture down to the local fish and chip shop and we'd get battered Mars bars for 90p. And we did that for about 4 years, so no wonder we're all in terrible shape. But apparently, Charlie, the Scots do it a lot with burgers and pizzas. I mean, it sounds disgusting, but it's a delicacy, I'm told, up there.
Well, they would say that, wouldn't they? I mean, let's be perfectly honest. I mean, I'm very careful what I put in my mouth, Ben, and I'm not sure going north of the border, or not even north of the border, was it? Where was it?
Lincolnshire.
Lincolnshire. North enough. I'm not sure I'd be going into a fish and chippy and asking for a deep-fried Mars bar. I do like a fish and chips, I have to say, which most people would have eaten yesterday, I'm sure, for Good Friday.
Yes, Good Friday.
But a battered, deep-fried Mars bar is something... I'm sure I'll try it once, but, you know...
You should try it.
Try everything once.
I'd probably find it very disgusting now, but when I was a kid, it was great. Candice, let me just get your thoughts on... You weren't in when we were talking about it, but the apparent erasure of Easter. What do you think? I mean, is that a thing? Is it just people getting a bit upset about nothing?
Well, I don't know. The thing is, it does seem strange that there was these decorations that were put up to celebrate one religion, but then no thought as to the other religion. And, you know, I've got no problem with, like, celebrating lots of different religions, and sometimes Ramadan will coincide with Easter, and that's OK. But it just seems like the council hadn't really given much thought to it at all. And you think, why was that? You know, I mean, there's such a major event, such a major cultural event, and they seem to have just... It seems to have gone under the radar with them.
This is a loaded question. Does London feel like an English city anymore?
To me, it does. To me, it still does. I think it's changed a lot. But, I mean, I remember when I first moved here in the 2000s, it felt super international. It felt like people were coming from all over the world to work in banking.
Yeah.
A bit less so now. I mean, I've noticed that people don't... you know, stay here as much. They sort of go abroad and they work in New York, or they go home. People seem very home-focused these days. So I think people are a lot less nomadic than they were when I was younger.
Yeah, quite transient. Charlie, is London an English city? I mean, does it... Of course it is, but does it feel like an English city?
Well, it's not a home county, so it's not, you know, you would see traditionally as England. It's a multicultural, diverse society. It brings in a lot of tourism. It brings in a lot of people from all over the world. So by its very definition as being the capital and the global capital of the world, it's going to be more global than an English sort of setting that you'd expect. But it doesn't make it any less of England, you know, I wouldn't have thought.
Got it. OK. Thank you, Charlie. Candice, appreciate that. I'm going to go and throw up in the bathroom, I think, after that Easter egg. Coming up, I'll be sitting down with this week's Greatest Britain, who very appropriately is in the studio today because it's Bipolar Awareness Day. She's going to be telling me about her story and experiences with the disorder. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to today, many of us are actually seeing some good amounts of sunshine, but there will still be a little bit of rain around. So first thing this morning, quite a chilly start out there, a little bit of mist around. Just keeping an eye on the risk of a little bit of cloud and patchy rain just affecting the very far east of England. But for many parts of England and Wales, a good amount of sunshine around, a few showers, but the main bulk of the showers really will be across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where one or two could still be on the heavy side. But in the sunshine, especially across the south, temperatures reaching around 14 or 15 degrees. So into Saturday night, for many parts of England and Wales, we generally turn dry and clear. The clear skies then moving up towards Scotland, giving a fairly widespread frost here come the early hours of Easter Day. At the same time, some scattered showers just moving into parts of southwest England, with the risk of a little bit of sea fog just lapping in across parts of eastern England. So a bit of a grey, murky start across eastern parts on Easter Day, but that will burn its way back towards the coastline, but may well linger along the immediate coast. Best of the sunshine come Easter Day will be across parts of Scotland, down the spine of the country, where the far west, again, seeing the risk of some showers, and that may well merge into a longer spell of rain as we head into the afternoon. Temperatures, maximum 16 degrees.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Showbiz & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, on this show, we're all about shining a light on amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, on World Bipolar Day, we're meeting the author who's raising awareness for bipolar, Janie Robbins. So Janie's husband, Simon, unfortunately took his own life after years of battling the illness. And following his death, Janie gave up her career in nursing to embark on a full-time 3-year university course in journalism and photography. And she's now gone on to publish a book. Here it is, Black Confetti, My Bipolar Marriage. And I'm delighted to say Janie joins me now. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us. And congratulations for being our Greatest Britain this week. Now, look, tell me, it's a very long story, isn't it? There's a lot of avenues, but essentially your ex-husband, Simon, everything was fine. It was great. You were together. You were married. And then he went to Glastonbury. What happened?
He'd had the tendency to suffer with depression, but after Glastonbury, he came back in a very heightened state. He was agitated, talked very fast, had lots of ideas, and spent lots of money. And he was just really, really on a high.
So what was he like before Glastonbury?
He was quite a lively personality anyway, and he was quite funny and animated. But there was a normal level, whereas after Glastonbury, he went to kind of +10.
And before that Glastonbury trip, how long had you been together?
13 years.
And there was nothing of this at all before that Glastonbury?
Depression, definitely. He'd had quite a bit of depression before.
So he then developed, I mean, I'll let you tell the story, but he then developed what you know now as bipolar. Can I ask if he, and excuse me for asking this, if he did drugs at Glastonbury that may have, because there's a theory that these conditions can possibly lay dormant and they're triggered by certain drugs. Did he do drugs that Glastonbury trip?
He did.
And do you equate that to his subsequent behaviour?
It was probably a major trigger for his first mania. Yes, I do.
So what was life like after that trip?
Crazy. We had 3 years of cycles of a mania followed by a deep depression and then some normality. And then as each Glastonbury occurred, he'd kind of go up again. He did have a hospital admission where he was diagnosed bipolar. And in the 3rd year was his worst mania, and he had a psychosis and lost touch with reality. And the problem was that he didn't think anything was wrong with him. He didn't believe he was ill. And it wasn't until the 3rd year after this psychosis that he came home one day and said, I think you're right, I've got bipolar and I need help. And I was delighted, because I thought, brilliant, with help,
you've got an answer.
We'll be OK, everything will be fine.
As his wife, obviously you loved him very much. How did you deal with that emotionally?
With
what does
great
that do
difficulty, yeah. Obviously it tore me to pieces. I struggled to cope with it, but I also tried very hard to make sense of what happened. So I did a lot of research. I looked into why people commit suicide and tried to understand it. Very difficult.
Is there enough coverage of bipolar in the media? Do you think people understand the condition enough? Are we sympathetic and empathetic enough to people with mental health conditions?
I think mental health is very much out there today, as it wasn't kind of 25 years ago. But I think bipolar is misunderstood. It used to be called manic depression, and I think you understand what manic and mania means. And what happens, people can be very depressed, but then they can go to such a high, they feel amazing and they quite like being in that state and don't want to return to kind of normality and depression.
And what did writing this book, we've got to hear, Black Confetti, My Bipolar Marriage, how was that for you? Was it therapeutic, documenting your experience?
It was very hard, because I really dug deep and I looked very deep into suicide and things like that. But it has been extremely cathartic. But my main aim of doing it is that I will hope that perhaps it might save one person's life, or maybe be helpful for a family who are going through that situation, and particularly for survivors of bereavement by suicide, like me.
And crucially, Simon did end up taking his life.
He sadly did.
After, how long had you been married? 13 years?
No longer then. We've been together about 20 years.
So where are you now? So you went through that experience, you processed it in this, quite amazing and thoughtful book. Where are you now? What does your life look like?
I'm happily married.
You remarried?
I remarried.
Oh, fantastic.
The book ends on a very happy note, without giving it away. I met my husband, Ben, in a swimming pool. And, life is good. I live in the country. I've got a little dog, 25 chickens, and I'm OK.
How did you go about the recovery process for yourself after not only Simon's bipolar, but his eventual, the quite tragic conclusion?
Well, I went off the rails a bit, honestly. Burnt the candle at both ends, got pneumonia, pleurisy, fractured 4 ribs, and...
How did you do that?
Crashed, just by not looking after myself. Lots of coughing, fractured the ribs.
Wow.
And I kind of had an epiphany once I recovered and said, I'm going to give up my nursing job. And I went to university and did a degree in journalism.
So, yeah, that's the silver, the light at the end of all this. You went back to university. How long did you study journalism for?
3 years, full
3
time.
years. And why journalism and photography in particular?
I'm so shallow.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
The truth is because I wanted to go and do a degree.
Yeah.
And I thought I'll do an arty kind of degree. I just fancied that. And I went to the local university, prospectus open, and it said journalism. And I thought, I can interview people.
Yeah.
I like writing.
Do you think that helped you grieve Simon and get over that experience? Taking your mind off something and doing a degree?
I think it did. But interestingly, with the book, I thought I'd done my grieving, but I hadn't. And since writing the book, people in the book, my loved ones, my dad, my sister-in-law, Simon's sister and brother-in-law, have all died. And it was then, when they all died, my grief for Simon came back.
Wow. Do you still think about Simon now?
Yeah, very much.
I guess it's something you'll never forget.
Not at all, no.
And just briefly, for anyone watching now who may be suffering from bipolar and their families, or, any other associated mental health condition, have you got any advice for them or words of wisdom to help them deal with it?
Yeah, I would just say, go to your GP. There's lots of things online, lots of charities that you can phone up. There's often people at the end of the phone. But it's so important to get the right treatment, because it's about balance,
And just briefly, why is Bipolar Awareness Day important?
Because I think it raises awareness that I think people don't understand what bipolar is. And I think the message needs to be out there because often it's just an exaggeration of somebody's personality.
Well, look, thank you so much. You really are an inspiration. And I was flicking through your book earlier and, you know, at parts of it, I was welling up with emotion. And I can't imagine what it's like to be with someone and love them and be married to them and then, you know, lose them, essentially, both through suicide, but also, you know, them and their essence. Anyway, we're back for the next hour. Lots more coming up, including a chocolatier in the next hour, where he's going to share with us all the delicious Easter treats. Don't go anywhere. This is Saturday Morning Live with me, Ben Leo, on GB News.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, as we go through the next few days, many of us will see some sunshine, especially today, but we also see some rain. That will be particularly noticeable as we come into Easter Monday. But for now, we've still got low pressure generally in charge, so there will be some showers around, especially across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some will be heavy, maybe the odd rumble of thunder. Best of brightness will be across England and Wales, but even here, there will be a few showers around. But in the brightness, temperatures will reach around 14 or 15 degrees across the southern half of the UK. Into the evening, we'll start to see the cloud begin to clear across many parts of the country. Exceptions really down towards the far southwest of the UK. We'll see some heavy showers here. They will move their way up towards southwest Wales and eventually into Northern Ireland too. And at the same time, we'll start to see some misty low cloud just beginning to move in from the North Sea. But where we do see the clearest of the skies, we will see a touch of frost as we start Easter Day. So a bright start for many central areas, but the misty low cloud across the east will spread its way westwards as we go through the course of the day. So come the afternoon, quite a grey picture for parts of England and Wales. A few spits and spots of rain too. Best of the brightness will be across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but again here we will see a few showers. But where we do see any sunshine, temperatures once again reaching the mid-teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you and happy Easter bank holiday weekend. I'm Ben Leo, this is Saturday Morning Live. Good to have your company this morning for an action-packed show. We have all of the day's top stories with former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth. Coming up, a boarding school, is it character building or an adventure? Can it result, however, in some significant negative effects later down the line? I'm going to be joined by two opposing voices to get to the bottom of the great boarding school debate. And of course, all the latest showbiz news. Beyonce's new country album has been released after 5 years in the making, but who she collaborated with this time? Also, do you like her new country song? I don't think I'm a fan. Ellie Phillips will be here to share all the latest. And of course, it wouldn't be Easter weekend unless I was joined by a chocolatier live in the studio to talk all things Easter eggs. How good does that chocolate look? I've already demolished one in one sitting. Against all NHS advice, I could probably do 10. I'm not going to do any more. I know some of you on the emails have asked me to, but not happening. Don't forget, I want to hear from you. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. But before anything else, Sophia Wensler has all your news headlines.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 11. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour, a league table showing the nationalities of migrants with the highest crime rates has been proposed. A group of Tory MPs wants to see the statistics published annually for every offender convicted in England and Wales. They say the rules will help the Home Office impose stricter visa and deportation policies for certain countries. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is behind the plan. Speaking exclusively to GB News, he said the public wants to know how arrivals to the UK are impacting the country.
I want the most honest and transparent debate about immigration, legal or illegal, that we can possibly have. And it is wrong that the government or other agencies hide statistics. I have laid an amendment to the upcoming Criminal Justice Bill, which tackles one of these issues, and it says that the government must publish statistics on crimes and sentences by country of origin and by visa and asylum status. I think that the public want to know who's coming into our country and what the economic, the fiscal and the societal impact of immigration is.
Now, counter-terrorism police are investigating the stabbing of an exiled Iranian journalist in southwest London. Pouria Zarati, who was targeted outside his home in Wimbledon, is said to be in a stable condition after suffering an injury to his leg. London-based TV channel Iran International says the attack follows the regime's plot to kill two of its presenters in 2022. Police say they're keeping an open mind regarding a motive. Political leaders are working to maintain stability in Northern Ireland after Sir Geoffrey Donaldson quit as DUP leader. He stepped down after being charged with historical sex offences. It's understood he told party officers in a letter that he will strenuously contest the allegations against him. Gavin Robinson, who's been appointed the DUP's interim leader, described the charges as a devastating revelation. And in other news, two security sources have accused Israel of striking a car carrying UN observers in southern Lebanon. The UN peacekeeping mission says 4 people were injured in what it says was an unacceptable attack. The Israeli military has denied any involvement, saying, contrary to the reports, the IDF did not strike the vehicle. Police in the Netherlands are dealing with a hostage situation at a nightclub. 3 people who were being held in the Café Petticoat have reportedly been released, but police say the situation is still ongoing and it's unclear how many are still inside. Around 150 nearby homes have been evacuated in the town of Ede, while authorities deal with the incident. It's believed there was no indication of a terrorist motive. Welsh military camps will be used to house Afghans who risk their lives helping the UK. East Camp in the Vale of Glamorgan will house people who worked with the UK government in Afghanistan but fled after the Taliban seized power. The site can host a maximum of 180 people, with 50 expected by the end of March and more arriving in April. Those arriving are eligible under the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy Programme. Households should brace for a host of essential bill increases from the 1st of April, but not all costs are going up. Cuts to national insurance and increases in the amount of people receiving benefits take effect in early April, but regular bills like council tax, broadband and water are going up, so experts say family budgets need to be attentioned carefully. The average annual council tax bill will rise by £106 this year. The average annual water bill will rise by 6% in England and Wales. Some good news, though. The annual energy bill for a household using a typical amount of gas and electricity will fall to £1,690, which is the lowest for 2 years. And travel disruption is expected to continue in large parts of the UK today as the Easter holiday gets underway. There were reports of long queues at Dover last night as vehicles faced an hours-long wait to be processed. Rough weather from Storm Nelson remains with flood warnings and alerts in place across England. Network Rail is urging train passengers to check their journey details before travelling due to some major routes being closed. And travel journalist Simon Calder warns about unforeseen travel issues.
The real serious issue, though, is actually for the things we weren't expecting, and that includes, you mentioned Storm Nelson, huge amounts of disruption right across the Great Western region. We had on Thursday, Friday, for instance, big problems on the lines to South Wales from London Paddington and to Bristol. Now it looks like the main line from London to Devon and Cornwall is blocked. There are workarounds, but again, everything going very, very slow.
And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ben.
Right, let's get some more on our top story. Labour, they've pledged to put failing water companies under tough special measures to force them to clean up their toxic mess and protect people's health. So the number of people admitted to hospital for waterborne diseases has surged in recent years, and that's as it looks like Thames water could be nationalised amid the rising E. coli in London's famous river. All this, by the way, just ahead of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race on the Thames today. Will Hollis, our reporter, is down there. Will, good morning to you. Is it all kicking up a stink, this E. coli situation?
Yes, well, for almost 200 years, competitors from Oxford and Cambridge universities have been coming down here to compete in one of the most fiercely fought sporting competitions, not just here in Britain, but across the world. This is a 4¼ mile stretch of the River Thames between Putney Bridge and Mortlake, and on average it takes the athletes around 20 minutes to complete the course. The fastest in 1998 by the men's team for Cambridge, who managed to complete it in a record 16 minutes. But the only record that's been making headlines this week is the record levels of sewage that has been discharged in 2023 into England's rivers and waterways. This is new data that came out earlier in the week from the Environment Agency, showing that double the levels of river pollution are in place for 2023 compared to the year before, 2022. Now, this is specifically worrying for this part of the Thames because River Action, as well as the Fulham Reach Boat Club, assessed part of the river for dangerous levels of E. coli, and they recorded an alarming rate. Now, E. coli is is the bacteria that's found in our intestines. It can be related to all sorts of illnesses, but most severely sepsis and blood poisoning. And in a stretch that is just over my shoulder, actually, around the corner at Hammersmith Bridge, they found that 10 times the safe level of E. coli was found. Now, how is this going to affect the race? Well, is it going to make it any slower? Probably not, but it does make it more dangerous for the health of the athletes and anybody that might be getting a little bit closer to the water. We've seen pictures this morning of the athletes getting into their boats. Usually they would do it barefoot, but they've been strictly instructed to wear Wellington boots and waterproofs and to make sure that they're wearing any sort of blisters with plasters on them. The key thing as well that is going to be making headlines later when the competition ends is that the winners have been instructed not to jump into the River Thames like they usually would to celebrate, because it could really be harmful for their health.
Fun down there today, and we'll be back with you on the channel later this afternoon. I just wouldn't bother doing the race in that situation. So let's get the expertise now of the boat race from British rower and Olympian Alex Story, the man who's said to have been the difference in Cambridge's winning boats of 1997 and 1998, and part of the team that completed the course in record time, as Will Hollis just alluded to. Good morning, Alex. Are you there? Good morning. There you are. Let's forget the E. coli and the rancid water for a second. How gruelling is the boat race for these athletes? Can you hear us, Alex? OK. We'll try and get Alex back there. But as Will said, it's going to be 16 minutes of all-out hardcore rowing. Charlie Rowley, have you ever been down there? I mistakenly thought you were from Oxbridge. You went to Oxbridge.
That's quite all right. You can make that mistake.
It was the voice in my ear told me that, so I'm going to blame that on them. But have you ever been down to the boat race?
I haven't, but I do live in Putney now, and it's taking place this afternoon, just after 3 o'clock, I think, or just before 3 o'clock. And so I might head down after this and soak up the atmosphere. The weather was great as I was coming in this morning, so it could be a perfect conditions for what could be another great race. And if the teams are as good as I hear that they are, they could be breaking that record of 96, 97, 98, whatever it was, 16 minutes.
Yes.
It could be a day to remember.
Candice, do you care about the boat race? Isn't it a bit elitist?
Yeah, I mean, I went years and years and years ago. It was a good fun day. I don't remember being able to see much at all. And I just felt like it was a social occasion.
Yeah.
You know, people sort of go there to see each other and catch up with one another.
I've never been, so maybe I'm just being a bit ignorant, but it just kind of feels like it's like not my kind of scene, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I never even... I mean, some viewers would probably say that you can, you know, it's very telling, but I never went to university. I mean, some of the abuse I'll get in emails, they'll probably be celebrating that. But, yeah, I never went to university, so I don't think we're going to get Alex, unfortunately, so we're going to move on to our paper review. Shall we... this front page of The Guardian, schools risk fueling hate by avoiding talk of the Gaza war. So schools in England are closing down legitimate debate about the Israel-Gaza war because teachers feel ill-equipped to discuss it and are concerned about political impartiality. And that's from the government's independent advisor on social cohesion. Should we be discussing wars in school, Charlie?
Well, historically, I think you have got to discuss war because that's where we get all of our history from and our freedoms from. So the First World War, Second World War, it's important to talk about war and conflict and the American Revolution and the Civil War, American Civil War and all the rest of it. So, yes, but in this particular case, it's hugely challenging for teachers because there is so much information out there. A lot of it is misinformation, and the situation itself is very sensitive. And so I think it's very difficult if you are a teacher trying to articulate the challenges of the history of that particular region, because there's always been an ongoing conflict within the Middle East, in lots of different countries, but particularly between Israel and Palestine, ever since the Second World War, or the end of the Second World War. It's led to, obviously, constant division to a point where a terrorist attack took place, and those are the facts. It is a terrorist attack that took place in Israel on behalf of, or at the hands of Hamas. Hamas are the government in Palestine, in Gaza, and this is where Israel have responded, obviously, to try and defend itself, as it is absolutely right and legitimate to do so. But what you see on social media, and then obviously since then Israel has obviously entered into Gaza. There are too many Palestinian innocent civilian lives that are being lost. Aid needs to get into in Rafah.
But Charlie, the point is this. I mean, I completely agree that we should be teaching about the world wars. They were, you know, does what it says on the tin. It's World War. But the Gaza-Israel war is so complex. It dates back decades and decades. It's a bit more intricate, isn't it, Candice, than teachers are equipped to deal with, don't you think?
And the problem is this story is about a report by Sonia Khan, who's just come out with a whole thing about how people don't feel they're able to express their opinions anymore. And she says it's in all areas and all spheres of life, people kind of self-censor because they're afraid of intimidation. And I know that teachers say that in schools, this is a problem. Kids don't know how to self-express anymore, express their opinion. They'll try and find a teacher or someone who they think agrees with them. That was a particular thing with Brexit. If you knew your teacher supported Brexit, then you would be more open about what you thought. If your teacher didn't, you'd keep quiet. And I want to know why schools can't facilitate debate. Obviously, with very young children, like my 5-year-old, I don't want him learning about this. He doesn't need to know about this.
Me neither.
But 12 and 13-year-olds might want to talk about it. And we have to figure out a way to help them do that.
OK. Talking of Brexit, good segue, thank you for that. Tory MPs are warning, this is on the front of the Daily Express, Tory MPs are warning that voting for Reform UK, Charlie, will kill Brexit.
Yes, well, it will.
You agree with that, do you?
I do, because if you vote Reform, you're more likely to end up with a Labour government, and they will want closer ties with the EU. That will undermine all of the hard work that's taken place over the last few years to get a Brexit deal, to get the Windsor framework in place, to allow us to take ourselves out of the EU, cut our ties, and take back control of our money and borders and laws. That's what the campaign in 2016 was all about. Put that all at risk at your peril by voting Reform, is what Ian Duncan-Smith is saying, and many other leading Tory MPs.
The thing is, Charlie...
Because it lets Labour in through the back door.
Your lot apparently delivered Brexit, but we've got uncontrolled mass migration, we've got illegal boats coming that they can't stop. So it's argued that the Conservatives have betrayed Brexit voters.
Well,
because Brexit was about immigration, I mean, mainly, amongst other things.
Yeah, totally. You know, the campaign was to take back control of your money, your borders and laws.
And it's gone the other way. It's completely turned on its head.
Well, Ben, I wasn't on that campaign. Funny enough,
you're Conservative.
I voted Remain. You know, there were always going to be challenges. I absolutely support Brexit. You know, that is what the public voted for. But of course there are going to be challenges. If you cut ties with European counterparts, including France, who you do need to work with. Now, I'm not defending France. We've bunged them a hell of a load of cash to try and help stop the boats. They're not pulling their weight, that's for sure. But there is no surprise, really, to anybody. If you vote to leave the EU, the French are not going to be the most helpful when it comes to dealing with this #1 issue. So I think people needed to be a bit more smart about that before getting involved in it.
Candice, is a vote for Reform UK just a wasted one?
The problem is with our electoral system, first past the post, there are just hard realities there, and third parties often get punished. I mean, this is the problem that UKIP had. They got something like 4 million votes, not one single MP. You need a very concentrated vote to actually make any impact. Perhaps in the red wall, if we see a total collapse of the Conservative vote and maybe to some extent the Labour vote, then Reform can start becoming a second party and then maybe at some point in the future winning outright. But I think those numbers and that hard reality just of the kind of system we have are going to impede them.
Got it. I mean, the argument is UKIP got, was it 4.5 million votes in 2015 and 1 seat? But actually, I don't think Reform care that much about getting seats. I just think they want to obliterate the Tories. We've managed to get Alex Story back, the Olympian who was the difference to Cambridge's winning boat races in 97 and 98. Can you hear me, Alex? Good morning. Fantastic.
Good morning.
I was asking you how gruelling the boat race is for an athlete. Just what kind of test is it for the human body?
Well, it's something close to dying and staying alive at the same time. I think the difference between the Olympic Games and the boat race is that it's a one-on-one race, and all the focus is really on yourself, but also the paranoia of your crew next to you not doing as you fantasized about. And I think in 97, when we did the boat race, we were a length and a half behind just before Hammersmith. And it felt as though it was going to be a very long way home. And then just suddenly between Hammersmith Bridge and Barnes Bridge, the heavens opened, the skies went blue. the noise from the crowd died down, and suddenly we just rode the perfect race, and we just went from a length down to a length up. And of course, that's the real joy of it. But of course, when you achieve perfection, which is very, very rare in a race, but when you achieve perfection in a race, you don't realize quite how quickly you go through your tank, your reservoir of power. And of course, just after Barnes Bridge, I ran out of juice. We had the Cox who was telling us to increase the race up to 40 strokes a minute. And the Oxford guys were coming back, and we still had 3.5 minutes to row. So it was absolute agony. And when the final post was crossed, I can tell you, I wasn't really of this planet. I was somewhere else, and I was spitting blood, and all my aches, whether there were broken ribs or anything, or broken backs, came out. But at least I and the crew had our name etched in eternity in the boards of our club, which is the only thing you get in rowing, is
Alex,
a little bit of fleeting glory.
you know, you mentioned when the noise of the crowd died down and you kind of got tunnel vision. Is that what athletes call getting in the zone?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why we're saying that you very rarely reach perfection during a race is because obviously of the tension. But the boat race has the quality of being relatively long. So we had a first 5 minutes that wasn't great, and then suddenly the boat was on rail tracks. It was unstoppable. The momentum was great. And that's really when you get in the zone. And of course, when you're in the zone, the danger is that you don't realize quite how much energy you're burning per stroke. And of course, that's the reason why towards the end of the race, we or at least physically, I was just hanging on to dear life.
Fascinating. I love sport and sport science and the psychology behind it. Just very briefly, it's meant to be quite stormy conditions today down at the boat race. How will that change things?
Well, the thing is, of course, because it's a meandering river, the Cox is going to have a great deal to say about the race, a little bit like last year. When you have difficult condition, the Cox becomes the driver, and the path he takes or she takes is going to be a real determinant. And of course, that means you have to gamble. Sometimes when the conditions are a little bit tougher and the water's a bit choppier, you have to do away with the usual path of the race, because what you're trying to do during the race, in the boat race, is you're trying to get to the center point of the river where the tide is strongest, because you're going against the stream but with the tide. So there is a narrow path in the middle where the tide is strongest, and you want to try and stick to that when the weather is good. But when the conditions are choppy, you want to try and gauge that against where the wind is going to hit you first.
Impressive. I'm looking forward to later on. And thank you, Alex Story, for being with us, former Olympian and double winner of the boat race. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Have a good one.
Right, still to come, I'm going to be joined by Ellie Phillips for all the latest showbiz news. But up next, should you send your kids to boarding school? I'll be settling that debate with my next guest. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Could we talk about opening up the new Bond role to someone, Alex? And,
yes.
This is an actor called Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Right. Do you remember when the director of the 50 Shades of Grey films had a young boyfriend, really, really young, like half her age? It was in all the papers at the time. Well, it turns out that was him.
He broke his career, I think, in a film called Kick-Ass, which was... I watched it, really great film.
You can't compare... What's his name? Who's the last Bond?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig.
To Roger. But you can't compare Roger Moore to Sean Connery either.
No.
Who's your favourite Bond?
My favourite Bond is Pierce Brosnan, probably.
Same.
Really?
Oh, come on, yes.
Sean Connery, maybe
So
Sean.
the classics.
Yeah.
I'm quite keen on Roger Moore. So, but I quite like the kind of the ironic raise of the eyebrow and all that.
Well, interesting, this sort of puts to death all of those rumours that James Bond was going to be a woman, James Bond was going to be a black man. There was lots of different rumours going around of what they were going to do with his
Idris
role.
Elba would be good.
He hasn't signed yet.
I mean, feminist, I would say James Bond shouldn't be a woman.
I totally agree.
Because we need to have our own stories that we tell and our own heroes. We don't need to kind of go in on that. We just just need to have a story that celebrates a woman, I think.
Who was your favourite, Eamon?
So I do think if you look at them all, there's not a bad one amongst them. But personally, I got to know Roger Moore, and an absolute gentleman and a man who was a star in every sense of the word, and a possibly handsome-looking man. Pierce, I think Pierce, very, very good, and Pierce again is a very likeable fella, very likeable. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, that the appetite, I think, for James Bond is still there, but they are reinventing it. And the fact that they change it and kind of go with the time. I thought Daniel Craig was very good, actually.
I just struggled with Daniel Craig the most because I just couldn't cope with blonde Bond. So the idea of a female Bond or, you know, I couldn't even cope with Daniel Craig. So.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, Ben Leo with you on Saturday Morning Live. Some emails flying in. Jacqueline says, eat your Easter egg in one go, Ben. Great to see it. Yeah, it was nice, but I'm feeling a bit woozy now. Jim says, we may be a less Christian country now, but we still have primarily Christian values, as does the US. And actually, that was my point last night when I covered Mark Dolan's show. I said, I'm not emphatically religious or, you know, I don't go to church, but I do try and heed the values and lessons of Jesus. And Joy says, children should be taught to debate in secondary schools and taught to defend themselves and their beliefs. Otherwise, they'll be ill-equipped for the real world. Thank you, Joy. Good morning to you, and thank you for watching. Right, so this week, a really intriguing story, actually, from Princess Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, who spoke about the challenges he faced whilst at boarding school. So for some, going to a boarding school may seem like a great adventure. Children get to be away from their parents and live with their friends. But is it a good thing, and does it build character? Or, as some have suggested, like Earl Spencer, is it cruel, and can it result in a significant negative effect on children? Joining me now to discuss this is Councillor Amelia White and Professor of Education Policy Tom Buick. Amelia, good morning to you. Let's just get straight to it. Boarding school, a good thing, or is it completely subjective?
It is something that causes a lot of difficulties for adults who have gone to boarding school. So primarily, the main thing that we see is difficulties in relationships. So they really don't learn how to regulate their own emotions, and therefore it's really hard when you're in relationship as an adult to be able to express yourself and show your vulnerability and connect with others. And that's one of the main things that we see. That's
so what does boarding school do to children to cut off that emotional, you know, ability? What happens?
Well, if you imagine yourself and you're 7 years old, and you've spent 7 years with your family, and then all of a sudden you're driven to an institution in the middle of nowhere, and you very quickly have to say goodbye to your mum, and you're with a group of strangers, like people who are there to attempt to look after you, but there's one adult generally for 50 children, so they can't. If you cry, you may be picked on or bullied, and therefore you learn very quickly to shut that down. I hear people all the time saying they actually remember consciously thinking, right, I'm going to stop feeling now because it's too painful. And then mum isn't going to come back.
Tom Buick, that sounds pretty brutal, Tom.
Of course, you've got to recognise for some children, boarding school, just like all sorts of educational settings, can be quite a psychological challenge. As it happens, I send my kids to the local state comprehensive. You know, sometimes that's challenging. I think we've got to really get this into perspective, Ben. There's about 13,000 pupils at boarding school here in the UK. It's less than 1% of the schooling population. as a whole. And we've got to understand why parents feel they need to send their kids to boarding school. They may be diplomats, they may be in the armed forces, they may work all over the world. There are very good reasons why parents and families feel they need to send their children to boarding school. And I do think, actually, whilst of course it's terrible what happened to Earl Spencer in the 1970s, I do think it's worth highlighting that we've banned corporal punishment in all schools, state and private schools, since the late 1990s in England, a bit later in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So I think a lot of the stories that we're seeing now in the media really reflect a bygone era. I don't think they're a fair reflection, actually, of the support and the nurturing that children get in boarding schools today.
So, Amelia, corporal punishment, of course, is gone. Good thing. Yeah, of course. Yeah, please.
Well, it's the abuse or the bullying or the violence that happens is on top of the trauma about being left on your own. So every child, so I currently run a course and I have people from all over the world, different ages, youngest in their 20s, eldest in their 70s. So they've gone through different decades, but they all have the same wounding, which is having to become an adult at a really young age without that parental support and guidance. They bring each other up. And where in the world do we learn that psychologically that's the best thing for children, to not grow up with parents
Tom, last
who
word.
love them, who are there to
look, the research doesn't really back up the claim that's being made. Professor Penny Kavanagh produced a very comprehensive report last August, actually, that showed, yes, of course, for some students, in fact, she renamed this so-called boarding school syndrome, boarding family syndrome. Often the causes of some of these psychological issues for young people starts with the family, not necessarily in the boarding school. And I think that was a very important piece of research on that subject.
OK, Councillor Amelia White and Professor of Education Policy Tom Buick, thanks so much. I know a few people, actually, who have quite deep mummy problems after being packed off to boarding school from a young age. So I've seen firsthand the effect it can have on kids. And actually, Tom mentioned there about diplomats and people working abroad. As a parent myself, I would never put my career above seeing my kids, because those years don't last very long. But anyway, fascinating debate. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Lots more to come on the show today, but first, let's get your news headlines with Sophia.
Thanks, Ben. It's 11:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. A league table showing the nationalities of migrants with the highest crime rates has been proposed. A group of Tory MPs wants to see the statistics published annually for every offender convicted in England and Wales. They say the rules will help the Home Office impose stricter visa and deportation policies for certain countries. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is behind the plan. Speaking exclusively to GB News, he said the public wants to know how arrivals to the UK are impacting the country.
It is wrong that the government or other agencies hide statistics. I have laid an amendment to the upcoming criminal justice bill, which tackles one of these issues, and it says that the government must publish statistics on crimes and sentences by country of origin and by visa and asylum status.
The Police Service of Northern Ireland is warning against speculation on social media on the charges against former DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. He's been accused of historical sex offences. The PSNI says victims must be safeguarded and the publication of any information which is likely to lead to their identification is a criminal offence. It's understood Sir Geoffrey has told party officers he will strenuously contest the allegations against him. Counter-terrorism police are investigating the stabbing of an exiled Iranian journalist in southwest London. Pariah Zarati, who was targeted outside his home in Wimbledon, is said to be in a stable condition after suffering an injury to his leg. Police say they're keeping an open mind regarding a motive. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Serving police officers, showing that up to 20% of them are thinking
about quitting the force and doing so within the next year or two. What on earth is going wrong? Problem, of course, is that those that go will be the experienced ones to be replaced by inexperienced ones. Kevin Hurley, former Detective Chief Superintendent at the Met Police, joins me from his home in Surrey. Kevin, this figure is shocking.
The terms and conditions have really dropped off under Theresa May's, what I would describe as an attack on the police service, where their pay has really dropped off, spending power down about 22% on what it once was. Worse still, the golden handcuffs, which were once the excellent police pension, have been taken away and the pension is now much reduced. The other thing that's killing them is the constant media and activist battering for police officers. Off the back of that one psychopath and the other, if you like, Tinder rapist, everybody now thinks the police are kind of all like that. What that means for the individual patrol officers, they're being given stick everywhere. For example, you know, their bosses left, right and centre are rolling over, oh yes, we're institutionally racist. What that means for a 25-year-old constable working in Balham High Street is everyone screaming at him, you're a racist pig. They get surrounded on the streets when they try and do a stop and search or an arrest. Add to that the fact that the criminal justice system is collapsing. They're tipping out the prisons with early releases, so because, of course, there's no prison space. Cases are taking years to get to court. They're getting derisory sentences because there's no room in the prisons. All of that's really demoralising for the police.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Saturday Morning Live, 11:35. It's time now for some emails. On boarding school, Kathy says, I went in the 60s and loved it. I wouldn't have done as well in my education if I'd gone to a day school. Everyone's different. Boarding school isn't for everyone, but certainly a lot of children gain enormously from it. Sarah said, I'd never send my child to boarding school. It's lazy parenting. And Grace said, I got sent to boarding school and now have a very fractured relationship with my family. I can't help but feel like they neglected me in the years I needed them most. And as I've mentioned to our previous guests, I have first-hand account of that with a couple of people. Right, let's get stuck into some of your weekly showbiz news. I'm delighted to be joined by showbiz journalist Ellie Phillips. Ellie, good morning to you. What's been going on? A lot in the hip-hop world, I hear.
A lot in the hip-hop world, a lot in the music world.
Yeah.
So the big story of the week has got to be about P. Diddy. Puff Daddy goes by many names, but his real name is Sean Combs. Two of his homes were raided this week by authorities. He's got a house here in LA and one in Miami. He wasn't there when they were raided. Two of his sons were, though, and they were cuffed during the process, which you can see there. P. Diddy himself actually was detained momentarily at the airport in Miami on his way to Bahamas, where he handed over electronic devices. Now, this is all part of an ongoing investigation into multiple claims. So, essentially, since November, December, what's happened is he's seen there with his ex-girlfriend, Cassie, in this picture. She's the first person who filed a lawsuit against him. He settled that lawsuit after one day, saying he, denies everything.
So he's accused of what? Trafficking girls?
So with Cassie, she accused him. So that's his ex-girlfriend. They were together from 2008 for about 5 years. She's accused him of sexual assault, physical assault, all sorts of really grim things.
Goodness.
He settled a day after she filed that suit, but said, I deny everything, but they settled out of court. her kind of lawsuit brought forward other claimants. So since then, there have been 3 more women who've come with claims against him, including other ex-girlfriends. And last month, a male music producer came forward and filed. So they've all filed suits. So these are
a male producer.
A male producer
who's accused P. Diddy of abusing him.
So, yeah, so they're all very different in what they accuse. So the male producer who filed in February, so his name is Rodney Jones Jr. He alleges that P. Diddy made unwanted sexual contact, groping, unsolicited touching of his anus, and he actually said he fears rape, that he was drugged and woke up and doesn't really know what happened in that instance. He also said that he was forced to hire prostitutes for P. Diddy and engage in sexual acts.
And what years were all these claims from?
So this male producer, this is from 2022 to 2023, so really, really recent. You're talking just a couple of years ago. Whereas the women who've made these claims, theirs are more historic. So theirs in the early 1990s, which is when his career just blew up over the world. You know, became this hip-hop sensation,
so
breaking and making artists.
If viewers don't know, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, he changes his name. He really exploded with Every Step You Take, taking the sample from that Sting song.
Absolutely.
And it was in tribute to Biggie Smalls, who had been murdered. Was it with Faith Evans, that song?
And it was that was the kind of thing that put him on the map in terms of his own music. But before that, he'd broken so many artists. That's why he's seen as a mogul. He's worth hundreds of millions of pounds. And so that's why, you know, he was able to pay off Cassie, who's his ex-girlfriend. So it's been a messy week. Obviously, him and his legal team completely deny everything. But then there is this raid that's happened this week and information that's been given over. So people are like, OK, where's it going to go next? Because it seems that more and more is coming out as things carry on.
Goodness me. Well, the details are shocking. It looks like he's got a lot on his plate, to say the least. Should we move on to Beyonce? She's got a new album out.
Yes, so this is Beyonce. It's actually her 8th solo studio album, but it's her first country album, if we can call it a country album.
I didn't like this. Let me just say before you get stuck into this, I am quite fond of country music.
Right.
You know, I love America. And then I heard this song and I was thinking, what right does pop star Beyonce have to come and just muscle into the country scene?
Well, I mean, she is born in Houston, Texas.
Right.
So she's born and bred in Houston, so why shouldn't she, in a way? And, you know, it's called Cowboy Carter, the album, but she herself has said, this isn't a country album, this is a Beyonce album. And when you listen to it, it's definitely not just a country album. My husband is a huge country fan. We go to country like whenever we can when it's here. But within this album, so it's 27 tracks and kind of interludes, all intertwined, which she loves to do. So this is the second of a 3-part album. The first, which was released in 2022, was kind of dance music and kind of reclaiming that. This is more country focused, but there's opera in there, there's rap in there, there's pop in there. So you can't just say it's a country album.
Maybe I'm just being a bit of a music Nazi, because, you know, I just think that if you like a brand of music, you want to protect it, and when people from other genres come muscling in. But I guess that's what pop stars do, isn't it? They reinvent themselves, they change their sound.
100%, and she has definitely done this. If you look at her last 3 albums, you're like, what? Where are you? What are you? But I think she likes that. I think she's like, don't put me in a box. I'm just playing around, doing music. People are loving it. Some people are kind of 50-50 about it. And interestingly, when she released the first 2 singles from this album, which she released last month, over in America, only 8 out of 150 country radio stations played them. The others wouldn't play them. So
why is that?
Because they were against it. They're like, no, Beyonce isn't, you know, isn't country. We can't put her on. But she's put this out now. People are loving it. Individually within the album, there are brilliant tracks. There are amazing tracks.
Is she going on tour? Can we see her in the UK?
She will go on tour with this, absolutely, no doubt. She hasn't put it forward. I'm not sure if any of the collaboration artists will be in there, because she's got, like, Willie Nelson, she's got Dolly Parton, and she's got Miley Cyrus.
Oh, really? Dolly's on a track
Dolly's
with her?
on a track with her doing Jolene.
Oh, okay.
They've redone Jolene, but added in a lot of spice. Jolene ain't begging anyone anymore. Jolene is fuming.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Should we finish very briefly with this last one about the Titanic? What's going on?
So an auction took place this week in America, and it's called the Heritage Auctions Treasures from Planet Hollywood auction. And if anyone's seen the film Titanic, they will know that the bit of door that Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio clung on to at the end of the film was a huge bit of debate. That went up for auction. It's an 8-foot prop, and it went for £718,000. It's not even the full door. It's just a bit of the frame at the top. But yeah, that went, and her dress...
Is that dollars or sterling?
That's dollars, $718,000. Do you know what that is in pounds? Are you going to do the math?
780. Probably about 640.
Yeah. So still a lot of money for a bit of a door off. But yeah, so that went, and her dress at the end went for $112,000.
Who won the item?
Don't know who won
Don't
it.
know.
No.
Probably some mega Titanic fan.
Yes, I mean, you'd have to be, wouldn't you?
Yeah, great film, cracking. Ellie, thank you so much,
You're so
appreciate it.
welcome.
Right, still to come, I'm going to be joined in the studio by a luxury chocolatier to talk all things Easter eggs. Lots of treats on standby for me. This is Saturday Morning Live, only on GB News. Stay with us.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, as we go through the next few days, many of us will see some sunshine, especially today, but we also see some rain. That will be particularly noticeable as we come into Easter Monday. But for now, we've still got low pressure generally in charge, so there will be some showers around, especially across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some will be heavy, maybe the odd rumble of thunder. Best of the brightness will be across England and Wales, but even here, there will be a few showers around. But in the brightness, temperatures will reach around 14 or 15 degrees across the southern half of the UK. Into the evening, we'll start to see the cloud begin to clear across many parts of the country. Exceptions really down towards the far southwest of the UK. We'll see some heavy showers here. They will move their way up towards southwest Wales and eventually into Northern Ireland too. And at the same time, we'll start to see some misty low cloud just beginning to move in from the North Sea. But where we do see the clearest of the skies, we will see a touch of frost as we start Easter Day. So a bright start for many central areas, but the misty low cloud across the east will spread its way westwards as we go through the course of the day. So come the afternoon, quite a grey picture for parts of England and Wales. A few spits and spots of rain too. Best of the brightness will be across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but again here we will see a few showers. But where we do see any sunshine, temperatures once again reaching the mid-teens.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, Ben Leo on Saturday Morning Live. It's 11:46 on GB News. Margaret has emailed. She said, our daughters went to board at a convent at 12 years old. They were given the choice as to whether they wanted to board or be day girls. They opted to board. They absolutely loved it and have lifelong friends from that period. Monima says, I went to boarding school aged 8 and was bullied occasionally, but it was all about growing up and prepared me for the real world, and I look back on my time there with pride. And Mary says, I'm not anti-boarding school, and I do think both sides of pro or anti-boarding schools have valid points. However, from a kid's perspective, there's nowhere to escape if at school they're having a difficult time with kids or teachers. So, yeah, I mean, lots of varied experiences, no doubt. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I don't think, you know, we have many years left with our kids before they grow up and they move out and start hating you, so I'd rather them be at home with me. But we're going to move on to my favourite segment of the show. I've been looking forward to this. It's Easter, of course, Easter Sunday tomorrow, and it's only right to end the show with chocolate. So who better to join me than chocolatier William Curley, whose passion is creating high-quality products with fresh and natural ingredients. He's published multiple books, has his own shop in Soho, central London, and his chocolate is also sold at Harrods. And I understand, William, good morning to you.
Morning.
You have a Guinness Book of World Records title for what?
Yes, so I guess it must be about 10 years ago now. We made a chocolate egg that was about 4 feet tall and 50 kilograms in weight, which was auctioned by Sotheby's. And it went for around £7,500, and it's still to this day the most expensive egg sold.
£7,500 for an Easter egg?
Indeed,
And it weighed 50 kilos?
Indeed, yes,
So
yes.
Who ate it? Was it shared around?
Yeah, what they actually did, the person who actually bought it...
It's on the screen now. Look. So why was it so special? Was it jewelled?
No, not jewelled. It's a non-jewelled. I guess it was just made with beautiful chocolate from Tuscany. It was filled with our handmade truffles, our sea salt caramels.
Oh, love truffles.
And the person who actually bought it, they actually gave it away to charity. So a nice little touch.
Oh, wow, fantastic. Right, so what have you got here? This is from your shop.
Boutique in Soho, Boutique in Harrods. Yeah. Yes, we've got our couture chocolates. We've got a berry-filled egg, so inside you've got raspberry truffles. We've got little sea salt caramel eggs, so sea salt caramels inside. And these are little crispy Fontine milk chocolate wafers.
Wow, look at the... I'm just going to grab this one. What is this one with the red...
So it's a berry egg, and inside there's raspberry truffles.
So it's like, I'm not sure if you can see from the camera, but it's quite a crispy coated egg. What's on the outside?
Yeah, so it's freeze-dried berries.
Freeze-dried berries?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. Charlie Rowley, what do you think? Freeze-dried berries coating an Easter egg?
Well, I slipped myself in unannounced, haven't I?
Yeah, I noticed that, yes.
Because I couldn't resist the temptation for chocolate. No, I'm quite a chocoholic. I do like a chocolate.
Who doesn't like a chocolate?
Well, quite. I'll be coming down to your store after this.
That's nice.
William, just tell us, over Easter, how much does business surge?
Oh, gosh. Oh.
Is this like your Christmas?
Yeah. Christmas and Easter are huge for us. I would say that they're 4 or 5-fold on a normal kind of period, in the month, if you like. It really sort of shoots us for us. And the great thing about Easter and Christmas, you get a sort of runway towards it. It just picks up gradually, then it kind of peaks, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Right. So it's only polite that we get stuck into these then. So I'm going to have a look at these ones. What are these?
These are our handmade fresh chocolates. So there's lots of different flavours there. There's pistachio, there's Japanese...
Did you make them? There we go.
Yes, all by hand, yes, indeed.
So you personally, not your staff?
Yes. I'm part of the team, yes. Okay. I cook as much as everybody else.
Let's try and get this one out here. What's this? Can you see that, guys?
You picked a raspberry one again.
Raspberry.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Would you want to try something a little bit more...
There we go. Right, raspberry one. Charlie, get stuck in. There you go.
Charlie, let me tell you some of the flavours, Charlie. This is a bread chocolate from Poil in the little bakery in Belgravia. This is rose and raspberry, Japanese black vinegar. This is a Peruvian blanco, pure ganache. Coconut, praline, maple, pistachio, hojicha tea, yuzu, Japanese citrus fruit, muscovado caramel, honey.
Am I going to insult you by saying it reminds me of Turkish delight?
Well, it's got a jelly on the base, so a pâte de fruits on the base, so you're absolutely right.
You're not offended by that?
Not at all. Peanut, hazelnut, rosemary, olive oil, orange and almond, and fresh mint. Please try one.
Oh, so fresh. Charlie, you get stuck into that.
Yes,
we want a nice in-depth review in a second.
Let me get it.
What is the most popular egg?
Thank you.
The most probably the two most popular eggs would be sea salt caramel filled eggs. We actually fill... So in the UK a year, there's 80 million hollow eggs made. Not many have fillings in them, but ours all have fillings. So sea salt caramel is very popular, and house dark truffles are very popular.
And this week, William, I saw stories about chocolate prices going through the roof.
Yes,
What's
indeed.
going on, and have you been affected by it?
Yeah, so everyone's going to be affected by it. The majority of cacao, the cocoa beans, are harvested in Western Africa, so Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, and in Ghana also. And there's lots of issues there with the weather. There's been lack of investment put into cocoa production facilities. So demand is outstripping the amount, if you like. So it's pushing it up. Well? I haven't as yet. Most of the beans that make the chocolate that we have comes from the indigenous part of the world. So if you want the higher quality cocoa beans, so Venezuela, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, those sort of nations, and it's not being impacted in the same way. However, demand will, impact it in some sort of form.
What is this one? This one is insane.
Is that yuzu? That's a fresh yuzu chocolate. Yes, so it's very pungent,
fresh. It's like bursting with flavour in my mouth.
Yes, that's exactly how it should be.
You wouldn't get that with, say, Nestle or Cadbury, would you?
That's not for me to comment on. No. I mean, historically wise, those companies, done amazing things, but I guess over time, they're much bigger than they once were. We're a very small artisan producer. We only have about 15 guys that work for us. It's all handmade in London.
Charlie, thoughts on that?
Delicious.
Which one did you have?
I think I've just had the hazelnut praline.
Praline on the base, yes,
which
nice.
Is absolutely delicious.
Get the texture on the base, lovely.
How does the UK fare compared to, say, the rest of the world chocolatiering? I mean, the Belgians, are they?
Yeah, well, historically wise, Belgians were the first nation to make fresh, or to make, not necessarily fresh, to make chocolates, if you want. That was in the beginning of the 1900s. Historically wise, Britain has got a great history, so Fry's, Rowntree, Cadbury were very much front runners in the chocolate market in the mid 1800s. In fact, Joseph Fry in Bristol, they were the first company to, if you want, make a bar of chocolate, as we know now. And Fry was also the first company to make an Easter egg, a hollow egg, if that makes sense. Although, historically wise, Easter eggs go back thousands of years.
So you've got some mini eggs here. Are these just standard chocolate eggs?
These are not standard eggs. They've got a beautiful praline scent. It's a little bit like the chocolate you had, Charlie. So you've got that sort of hazelnut, almondy, crispy, Fontine wafer in the centre.
Crack them open.
Crack them open, OK. Do you know what? I don't know if you thought it, but I've already devoured a whole Easter egg on this show because the NHS dished that advice out saying do not eat Easter eggs in one sitting.
Oh, really?
Which, you know, a lot of people were a bit miffed about. They said it's the nanny state, so I, as I would, smashed one a bit earlier.
Let me interact and tell you something. The problem with real chocolate should only have cocoa mass, cocoa butter, sugar, and a bit of vanilla. A lot of chocolate that you buy, commercial chocolate,
I'll take the white one. Yeah.
Has other fats in the chocolate, if you like, so vegetable fats and soya fats, that type of thing, and that's a big issue. And also, a lot of the, if you want, commercial chocolate is loaded with sugar.
Yeah.
So hence why the NHS is kind of putting that out. If you're eating finer dark chocolate, it's not such an issue.
Thank you so much for bringing all these in. What
You're
a
welcome.
treat.
You're welcome.
I'm sure the production crew backstage...
They're going to have some of these,
well.
yes.
Yeah, great stuff. William Curley, chocolate.
No worries.
And if people want your chocolates, where can they go?
So I've got a little shop in Soho, Smith's Court, just off Brewer Street. I also got a shop in Harris Department Store, and you can, of course, buy online, just williamcurley.co.uk.
Great. Good stuff.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoying that, Charlie?
Cheers.
Thank you.
Right, that's all for today. Thank you so much. Darren Grimes is up next. Really appreciate all your emails and your messages, all the praise and the abuse as well. Have a great Easter weekend. Whatever you're doing tomorrow, enjoy it, be with your family, and I'll see you tonight for Saturday 5.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, as we go through the next few days, many of us will see some sunshine, especially today, but we also see some rain. That will be particularly noticeable as we come into Easter Monday. But for now, we've still got low pressure generally in charge, so there will be some showers around, especially across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some will be heavy, maybe the odd rumble of thunder. Best of the brightness will be across England and Wales, but even here, there will be a few showers around. But in the brightness, temperatures will reach around 14 or 15 degrees across the southern half of the UK. Into the evening, we'll start to see the cloud begin to clear across many parts of the country. Exceptions really down towards the far southwest of the UK. We'll see some heavy showers here. They will move their way up towards southwest Wales and eventually into Northern Ireland too. And at the same time, we'll start to see some misty low cloud just beginning to move in from the North Sea. But where we do see the clearest of the skies, we will see a touch of frost as we start Easter Day. So a bright start for many central areas, but the misty low cloud across the east will spread its way westwards as we go through the course of the day. So come the afternoon, quite a grey picture for parts of England and Wales. A few spits and spots of rain too. Best of the brightness will be across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but again here we will see a few showers. But where we do see any sunshine, temperatures once again reaching the mid-teens.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The people